Liu Cixin's Remembrance of Earth's Past, humanity discovers the universe is not a cradle of cooperation. It is a dark forest, a place where every civilization is a hunter, armed and terrified, hiding in silence, knowing that to be seen is to be destroyed. In such a world, survival demands absolute resolve, no hesitation, no mercy. Humanity's answer to this reality was brutal and effective. The dark forest deterrent, a doomsday trigger that would expose any alien world to certain annihilation. One person held that power, the sword holder. The first was Luoji, a man who embodied masculine strength in its purest form, unflinching logic, an iron will, and a mind forged by the weight of consequence. When he stood before the cosmos, it listened, not because he was violent, but because he would not bend. He made it clear, touch Earth and you die with us. And for decades, that single thread of masculine resilience held back annihilation. Then came Changxin, intelligent, compassionate, and tragically ruled by a feminine impulse to nurture, to understand, to preserve life, even when that life threatens your own. She was given the same sword, but lacked the strength to wield it. When the Trisolarans tested us, she hesitated. She hoped empathy would outmatch fear. She appealed to morality in a universe without it. And in that moment, everything crumbled. The deterrence became a bluff. The illusion of strength collapsed, and the galaxy did what it always does when weakness reveals itself. It moved in for the kill. Humanity was lost, not because of aliens, but because we handed the sword to someone who could not use it. This is not just fiction. I look around today and I see Changxin in women everywhere. In the rise of emotional reasoning over strategic thought, in the erosion of masculine resilience, in the glorification of vulnerability over strength. Modern women have embraced the very qualities that destroyed us in Liu Cixin's vision, and they're steering civilization the same way. In a world that demands teeth, we're celebrating softness. In a universe that rewards ruthlessness, we are led by mercy. This is how civilizations die. Let me show you how we've already doomed ourselves. There was a time when womanhood meant something sacred, connected to life, family, and place. But the world changed, and so did women. After the Industrial Revolution, machines replaced muscle. Human strength was no longer the engine of civilization, and for the first time, women were no longer bound to the land, the hearth, or the child. They entered the factories, worked in cities, and lived in tenements. Children were institutionalized, sent to schools and daycares, freeing women from the biological rhythms that had once defined them. This wasn't just technological change, it was civilizational dislocation. And soon, the powers that be saw the opportunity. Men like J.D. Rockefeller realized that if both parents worked, the system could double its workforce, twice the labor, twice the taxes, half the wages. So women were told a new story, that motherhood was slavery, that domestic life was oppression, that freedom meant leaving the home and entering the system. But this freedom came on someone else's terms. Women didn't build the institutions they joined, they inherited them. They didn't create the structure, they stepped into it. And they began to accumulate power within systems they never had to suffer to construct. Then came the vote, a seismic shift. Women were given political power without being bound to the draft. They could shape the state without being required to defend it. The bond between sacrifice and sovereignty was broken. With second wave feminism, things went further. What began as a call for equality turned into a campaign to dismantle the feminine essence itself. Femininity was now weakness, womanhood a performance, motherhood a burden. Masculine traits were glorified, but only in women. And so we raised a generation of women, told to conquer, climb, consume, yet still shielded from the cost that shaped male competence. Power was demanded not based on merit or outcome, but parity. Equal numbers of CEOs, politicians, tech founders, not by effort, but by optics. Meanwhile, the family eroded, birth rates plummeted, gender became plastic, strength became shameful, and now women have become the architects of society. They dominate education, control the moral language of media, reshape laws, hold institutional power across nearly every sector. Now they hold the sword, but the question is, will they use it when it matters? Because in Liu Cixin's vision of the future, we've seen what happens when they don't. In remembrance of Earth's past, the swordholder was once a man, Luoji. He was cold when he needed to be, ruthless when it was required. Not because he was cruel, but because he understood the universe. He understood the dark forest, a galaxy of predators, where mercy is suicide. When Earth first made contact with the Trisolarans, humanity had centuries to prepare. The alien fleet traveled across interstellar space for hundreds of years, slowly, relentlessly approaching our solar system. We had time to build a strategy. We had time to understand the stakes. And that strategy was the Dark Forest Deterrent. The Dark Forest Deterrent was humanity's most terrifying weapon, not because it could destroy, but because it could expose. Conceived by Luoji after interpreting Yun Tianming's hidden messages, it was a system of strategically placed nuclear warheads programmed to detonate in an unnatural sequence, one designed to broadcast the exact coordinates of the Trisolaran homeworld to the cosmos. This signal would not be confined to our galaxy. It would stretch across the entire observable universe and perhaps even further, since alien technology may far exceed our understanding of space, time, and perception. The full horror of such exposure was glimpsed through the fleeting thoughts of an alien known only as Singer, a low-ranking, janitor-like figure in an unimaginably advanced civilization. Upon detecting Earth's initial broadcast, he didn't respond. He simply thinks to himself, amused, remarking that we are plucking the strings of our star. Amused to the core by the idea that we believed that we could call out into the void and remain safe. In the brutal reality of the dark forest, where silence is survival and to be seen is to be destroyed, the deterrent weaponized that truth. It didn't threaten the enemy with force, it threatened them with revelation, and left the rest to the universe's quiet, merciless logic. For decades, this threat was real because Luoji held it. He was the first sword holder, and the Trisolarans feared him. But when he stepped down and Chongqing was handed the sword, the Trisolarans knew. They struck immediately. They knew she wouldn't press the button. They knew she wouldn't dare. And with perfect timing, they pounced, destroying the deterrent, humiliating Earth, and shattering humanity's last illusion of power. She sympathized with the enemy, she hesitated, and she trusted. And with that single act of feminine mercy, humanity lost everything. Earth was left defenseless. And the cosmos responded exactly as it always does, without pity. But the story doesn't end there, because centuries later, when the cryogenically frozen men of the past are reawakened, we see something horrifying. The men of the future, products of this feminized world, are soft, emotional, and indecisive. Masculinity itself has become taboo. Strength is called savagery. Confidence is seen as cruelty. A man who acts is seen as dangerous. The women and men of this future regard the frozen survivors of the past as brutes, barbaric and emotionally stunted. But those brutes are the reason humanity survived at all. Luoji was one of them, a relic, a fossil. But he held the line. He carried the terrible burden of being feared. He bore the weight of survival. He was a real man, formed before compassion became law, before strength was seen as violence, before the sword was dulled by sentiment. And so I ask you now, in our world, who holds the sword? Look at our politics, our corporations, our social values. The sword is no longer held by warriors, but by caretakers. People trained to nurture, not to fight, to soothe, not to defend. But the universe doesn't reward kindness. It rewards the will to act. And if the time comes when we are tested again, will they press the button? Or will they blink? Like Chongqing. But not all hope was lost. One man, long forgotten by most, did what no army, no weapon, no institution could do. Yun Tianming, a quiet, unassuming man, in love with Chongqing, rejected and terminally ill. And yet, when asked what he would do with his final days, he gave them away. He donated his brain to humanity to be launched into space in a desperate attempt to communicate with the Trisolarans before their arrival. A sacrifice made not out of anger or ideology, but quiet masculine resolve. A willingness to face annihilation for the greater good. A masculine act of absolute sacrifice. The kind we no longer celebrate. The kind we've forgotten how to even recognize. Captured by the Trisolarans, reassembled by alien science, Yun Tianming became a tool of his enemy. They forced him to write 100 stories. Beautiful stories, strange, surreal, and tragic. Tales meant to pacify us, to wrap our minds in silk while they tightened the noose. But Tianming was smarter. He embedded messages, hidden signals, secret maps of resistance. Only a few stories contained these truths, buried like bombs, and for those with the discipline to study them, the courage to believe in more than the surface layer, he gave us everything we needed to fight back. Not through brute force, not through emotionalism, but through clarity, strategy, and sacrifice. Real masculine virtue. Tianming knew we would forget how to think, so he left behind a code designed to outlast our softness. And maybe Lu Xixin did the same. Maybe Remembrance of Earth's Past isn't just a novel. Maybe it's our 100 stories, a myth for a fallen age, a riddle written in the ruins of masculinity, a warning disguised as wonder, and maybe, just maybe, only a handful of these stories truly matter. Stories like Luoji's, like Tianming's, like Chongqing's, not as a hero, but as a mirror. And the message in those stories is not vague, it is blindingly clear. If we want to survive what's coming, if we want to build a future that isn't soft, silenced, and broken, then we must become the kind of people who can press the button. And we must see that right now, in our time, the sword has already changed hands. And it may be our last chance to take it back. This is not entertainment. This is not fiction. It is a coded message for the few still capable of understanding. And you, hearing this now, must ask yourself one thing. Am I one of them? The sword has already changed hands, and it may be our last chance to take it back. Today, those who hold it lack the will to use it. They preach compassion, but cannot defend. They speak of equity, but reject responsibility. And so the world stands exposed, vulnerable, not because there are no enemies, but because there is no one left willing to face them. We are not the sword holders, not yet, but we must become the generation that takes it back, through clarity, through discipline, through the quiet rebuilding of strength that no longer fears being called dangerous. This isn't about hatred, it's not about blame. This is about survival. It is about truth. And it's about time. The softness that governs now will not save us. It will only whisper comforting lies as we are erased. So stand up, speak clearly. Reclaim what was once called virtue, what was once called manhood, because no one else will. And because the next time the sword is handed over, it must go to someone who will not hesitate to press the button. It's time to stop following women and to start leading them instead. They hold the sword, but cannot bear the weight.